my friends, and welcome to episode 98 of the Kiss Army Nation podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Pasquale Veri.
And I am Claudio Spera. Welcome to the show, everyone. Known as the Winged Knight of Heavy Metal, our guest tonight has an impressive and successful career in the rock and metal world. Born in Amityville, Long Island, New York, he has all the possible check marks a true rock star can have. Would you like to hear stories from someone who was part of the New York Glam scene in the 70s? Check. Someone who played in places like Max Kansas City and CBGB? You got it. Someone who rocked it out with legendary bands like Sin, WASP, WARLORD, Steeler, and the list goes on and on? You better. And one more detail that Kiss fans will love. Would you like to hear stories from someone who was there at the inception of Kiss? In the loft at 10 East 23rd Street? Check. Ladies and gentlemen, please let us introduce you to our dear friend, Rik Fox. Welcome to the show, Rik.
Mille grazie. Thank you for having me.
Super cool.
No, thank you so much for coming on the show, and to have a guest of your stature and what you've seen with your own two eyes is only something a Kiss fan could dream of. So,
thank you.
Looking forward to hearing your stories.
I hardly think of myself as stature, but okay.
I'll take it.
So, Rik, recently we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Kiss's first show at the Coventry, and you were there with the band in the early days. Now, looking back, Kiss fans tend to, romanticize the band and their importance in the early 70s. But again, you were there. So how did you hear about Kiss? And in your opinion, how relevant were they to the New York scene at the time?
I was living in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And in Greenpoint, Brooklyn is one of those places where they're known to having a bar in almost every corner. And the Criscola family had just moved from Williamsburg over into Greenpoint, and they moved around the corner from me in an apartment building upstairs over a bar. And they didn't have a backyard because they were like on the second floor. So if you go out their kitchen window, there was like a roof that was there. It was the roof of a parking garage that was below it for the tenants in the next building over. So that was essentially their backyard. And Peter's father raised pigeons, like a lot of Italian fathers do, and he had a coop up on you go up a ladder up to the upper part of the roof, another higher part. And he had a big cage up there, and he'd let the pigeons out and they'd fly around and come back in the cage like that. But that's where they lived. They lived around the corner from me, and they didn't. I guess it's hard to describe that. I would say that they didn't look like they blended in with the rest of the neighborhood. They looked kind of more exotic, being Italian, dark hair, dark eyes, and Greenpoint we had a heavy Italian population and demographic, but it was also Polish and Puerto Rican and Irish and like that. They didn't really interact with the rest of the people on our street. But whenever they would go grocery shopping, Mrs. Criscola with Joanne and Donna, they would walk down our street and go to get their groceries. And when they coming back, like if I was outside in front of my house, the girls didn't really make much contact with me. But Mrs. Criscola was always very pleasant, very smiling, very happy. Hi, how are you? Like that. Very, very friendly. I think maybe they felt like, because they were new there, maybe they felt a little, not intimidated, but, they didn't blend with the rest of our street like that. But the girls, Donna and Joanne, and then our friend Anne Marie, who lived around the corner, the three of them would play ball down at the end of our street. The end of our street began a series of industrial truck yards, where the semi trucks would park and things like that. So they would play down that end with their ball, and occasionally the ball would go wild, and they'd have to run and catch it. And I would watch them just as an observer, just watching them play. And after a while, they noticed me watching them. So they were kind of like giggling amongst themselves that this guy with the long hair was watching them. And so a couple of times the ball came towards me, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it broke the ice. You know, I eventually started to talk to them, and we became friends. And you know, I was still in high school at the time. I think it was a sophomore. I think it was around 72. I was a sophomore, and so they were telling me that their older brother Peter was a rock star through the course of our conversations. And I said, well, who does he play with? And they said a band called Chelsea. And I had never heard of Chelsea at the time, and they had a copy of the record. So we put it on, we listened to it, and to me they sounded like maybe a heavier version of like the Grateful Dead, like kind of acid psychedelic rock, you know, like that. And they had some up-tempo things, and they had some dreamy ballad type songs like that. And then there was a younger brother, Joey. He was closer to my age, and he was an artist like I was. He would draw and, you know, illustrations and graphic things, and he was very influenced by the Rolling Stones. That was his favorite band. And of course, whatever his brother Peter did, you know. And so I started to, you know, hang out at their house, and Mrs. Criscola was very gracious, you know, very nice and pleasant to know. There was an older sister named Nancy, and she was a single unwed mother. I guess the husband abandoned her, and so she always kind of had like a bitter attitude, you know, like that. And but she was nice, you know, sometimes. And that was pretty much it. That's kind of, you know, how I came to meet the family. And then at you know, this one point, Peter was already married to Lydia, Chris, at the time. They were living further south in South Brooklyn. So when Peter answered or put out the ad in Village Voice and Rolling Stone, wherever, you know, drummer willing to do anything to make it, and Gene and Paul answered that ad, you know, and they got in touch. So at this point, I guess Peter was just starting to rehearse with them.
Right.
And like that. And so if we happened to be at the mom's house, he would stop to see his mom on the way over the bridge into Manhattan. And so, you know, he'd say, you want to come watch us? You want to come? Well, you know, we're going to be rehearsing. So we would jump in. He would be driving Lydia's car. So we'd all climb into Lydia's car and go across the bridge, and he'd park the car. We'd go up into the loft. And that was Kiss's loft, you know, with the egg cartons stapled to the wall to absorb the sound, like that. I think in my recollection, I don't remember what other people say the dimension of the room was, but New York and Manhattan had a lot of industrial or former industrial lofts. So, you know, there was like sewing companies, there was garment companies, and they would, you know, when the company would close and move out, it would just be this big abandoned space. Like that. So I think the room was probably about maybe 10 feet wide by 30 feet deep, something like that. And they were set up at one end, you know, the drums and the amps like that. And I remember distinctly seeing a stencil on Gene's SVT, Ampeg SVT cabinet that said Jack Bruce. Well, as we know, Jack Bruce was the bass player in Cream. And so I guess Gene had bought one of Jack Bruce's old amp cabinets from one of the music stores on 48th Street, which was a series of all music guitar stores, drum stores up and down 48th Street. So that's one of the distinctive things I remember. And it was a couch there, and there was some chairs. It was, but a very Spartan room. There wasn't really, you know, there's nothing pretty about it. You know, it was very, very, you know, paint peeling on the walls, things like that. So, okay. And that was what I remember of the loft.
Rik, have you ever written a book? Because I love the way you sort of set up the scene. It's like we were there. I could visualize everything that you're saying. That's really cool, the way you described the loft.
I started to write a book probably around 2006 or 2007.
Okay.
It takes a lot of discipline to make yourself sit down and write. Mm-hmm. And there's just so much that's gone on in my life, you know, from my youth on up, that I started it. I never finished it. It's kind of been a work in progress. There's just so much recollection that I have to put in it. And there's a lot of things I don't remember that I wish I could. So it's in my old computer. It's all in the files. I have to just make myself sit down and continue to get back into the writing mode. But yeah, I will be covering a lot. It's just so much that's going to be in that book.
I can imagine. I can only imagine.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And an interesting youth.
Hey, Rick, I truly cannot believe, being here in front of you listen to these stories. You were even there before they kind of auditioned Ace, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
and they were rehearsing as a trio. Maybe at that time they were with Lester, not even Kiss. So,
Yeah.
but once Ace was in the band, we all know that Kiss were trying different things to make it work. Did you ever have the impression that something big was waiting for them, that they were going to make it?
Well, good question. We missed the audition. I guess they weren't allowed to have anybody in it when they were auditioning guitar players. I know Bob Kulick, my friend, the late Bob Kulick, he auditioned, and also my friend JJ French from Twisted Sister, he auditioned.
Right.
They went there. I think Bruce Kulick, he was with Blackjack at the time with Michael Bolton. I think he auditioned. But the next time we came up there, after watching a few rehearsals, Ace was already in the band, and we had never seen or heard a band like this before that had that kind of power. Even early on, then the arrangements, their harmonies, the melodic walking bass lines that Gene played, the really loud. I mean, they play loud power chords. Paul Stanley on the power chords like that. We had a really good feeling that these guys are going to be big, but we didn't know how to think about how big they were going to be. I think Kiss had said they wanted to be the band that they never saw on stage, and it's a lot of the same influences I had. They had the power of Humble Pie and the Who, and the theatrics came into that afterwards. But just in rehearsals, they didn't really wear the makeup. It was just in street clothes.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys were loud and powerful, and we didn't have. There was no yardstick to measure them against, to compare them to. There was nobody else like them. They were totally original. And Ace, we went up there. Ace was leaning against the wall in a gray pinstripe suit with a purple sneaker and an orange sneaker, I think it was. and he kind of looked like he could be Shirley MacLaine's brother. They had a very similar look in the face, like that. And he wasn't really, while the band was rehearsing, he wouldn't interact much with them. He would just stay leaning against the wall. Well, he's from Gendel, so he has problems with gravity, so his balance. But Paul would nudge him to get off the wall and come over and interact with them. They were trying to do some kind of movements, which later became the movements that they did in their opening song, Deuce. Mm-hmm. The choreography where they would all rock back and forth like that. There was early signs of them trying to do that, but they were still trying to find who they were at that time. But that was my recollection of it. And my friend John from high school, my friend John Alton, he would come up there with a 6-pack of Budweiser beer that they call the 60-ounce, the tall boys, mm-hmm. like that. And Ace kept bumming the beers, but John, can I have a beer? John, can I have another beer? John, and he would drink all of John's beers up like that. But that was just some of the memories from the early Loft like that. And even back then, in his 20s, Gene was a wise guy. He was not so condescending yet. He wasn't really arrogant yet that much, but he was a wise guy, and he claimed to be an authority on science fiction movies and horror movies, and he knew what the characters were, when the movie came out, who directed it, all this stuff. And I would kind of try and catch him all the time because I was a fan of the same genre, so I would try and throw trick questions at him and watch him try to remember what the answers were. And I only caught him once. But and he wasn't pleased about that because he prided himself on being such an authority on the movies, the science fiction horror movies. But that was pretty funny.
Hey Rick, there's so many books out there, saying that early on, the true rock star in Kiss was Peter. Because of his experience, he had played before. He was, older than the other guys. Was it really like that? He was the driving force at the beginning of the band, at the start of the band?
Well, you got to understand, each guy has a completely different personality. They all come from different backgrounds. Well, Gene and Paul are, Jewish guys. They came from Jewish backgrounds. Peter was Italian, like street gang Italian.
Yeah.
So he was a lot more assertive, kind of tough guy, like wise guys, like in the mafia movies. He was kind of like that attitude, but a rock and roll version of it.
Right.
And when I first met him, he had a tight blue jeans and a fancy shirt, and he had a platform. Everybody's wearing the platform boots back then, platform shoes, and he had the rock and roll haircut. I mean, he looked like a rock star, just plain and simple like that. And as a matter of fact, Peter gave me my first rock and roll haircuts.
Oh yeah,
because at that time, the hairstylist Paul McGregor had come over from the UK, from England, and he was cutting all the rock stars' hair. The Sweet and Queen and Mata Hoople, Gary Glitter. He was cutting all the rock stars' hair, and with this layered effect, so it was shorter and it would feather out and get longer that way. And if you look at the Rod Stewart and the Faces, like on the back of the Not As Good As a Wink album, if you look at the marionettes, the puppets of them, Rod Stewart has this hair with sticking up on top, and so does Ronnie Wood. Well, they called it a rooster, like rooster feathers stick up.
Okay.
So when you organize it in a hairstyle fashion like that, we called it a shag. It was called a shag haircut, which has nothing to do with the reference of Austin Powers. That's a different kind of shag. But I was starting to grow my hair long. I was in high school, and I said, "Can you cut my hair like yours?" He says, "Get me a pair of scissors and a Budweiser tall boy, and I'll cut your hair." So I ran a corner back to my house. I got a scissors, and I went and got him a beer, or a couple of beers, and we sat up on the roof out the window of the Chris Gola's residence up there, and he cut Liddy was sitting there, and he cut my hair, like that, put the layers in it, and he stood back, he looked at it, he goes, "You look like an old rock star," like that. So I said, "Cool," and I ran back to my house. And my grandmother got really mad. She goes, "It's still too long. Cut it shorter. It's still too long. Cut it shorter." And I went back and told her, "My grandmother's mad." She said, "It's still too late." He goes, "What is she? Hell with that." I can't remember exact words. He was like, "Screw that." He did a couple of little snips here and there. He goes, "I'm not cutting it any shorter than that." He goes, "Then it won't look right." So Peter gave me my first rock and roll haircuts. He was like a big brother to me. I never had.
Right.
And he and Lydia would come over sometimes just to hang out, and he'd put on like funny little shows, little plays. Peter and Lydia put on something called the Cunty and Bunty Show. I don't remember what it was, but it was some type of sexual innuendo, but like that. And they had sheets on a clothesline, like curtains, almost like the Little Rascals when they put on a barn production. Like that. And so if anybody, your audience knows what that is. So Peter just gave me my first rock. So in high school, I was the first guy to have like the rock and roll haircut, and everybody noticed. I was wearing I was ahead of the curve in high school. I was wearing platform shoes, and I would spray glue on the base of my shoe, and then I cover it in glitter so the glitter would stick to the glue. And I would wear that in high school. And as I walked down the hallway, as the glitter sometimes would fall off, it was like the character Pigpen in Peanuts in the cartoon. When he would walk, he would leave this dust cloud behind him, trail. So when I would walk, I would leave this little trail of glitter coming off my shoes. And they could tell Rick was here. You could see the trail of glitter. So I was trying to be, fit in, with what I was watching, the Kiss guys. I was trying to copy. They were influencing me. I was trying to copy what they were doing,
Right.
So it's funny you mentioned glitter, because that's the next thing I want to talk about. I want to know more about you and the New York glam scene. How did you exactly get immersed into such a world?
Around 1974, I graduated high school. I was working in Manhattan as a foot messenger, and right around the Madison Avenue, where all the advertising agencies were. And I was working for a printing company. So as a messenger, we have to constantly, it's walking distance, 10 blocks either direction. That's where all of these companies were. So you go, you pick up whatever their artwork is for the newspapers, and you bring it back, and the printing company does the touch-up work on it. Then you bring it back to the advertising companies. Well, a coin management was right there on Rocksteady. It was on East 55th Street between Madison, I think, and Park, or Madison and Lexington. But yeah, Madison and Park. And so, I was always up at a coin's office like that, and because by this time, Kiss was already starting to move and everything. I'd already seen them at the Diplomat. I'd already seen them at the Coventry. I missed them at the Daisy, but so Kiss was already starting to get established by '74. So I graduated in '74. So that summer, I was sitting on the steps of the Seagram's building, which is a big alcohol brand company, and it's used in a lot of movies. And this girl walks by. And she looked at me, and I looked at her. It was like we looked like two aliens who recognized each other in a strange place. She had the same haircut, and I'd never seen anybody else with the same haircut outside of the rock guys. And she came over, and we struck up a conversation. She told me about the clubs, and I had yet to hang out in clubs in New York like that. I think I was at the Mercer Arts Center once, and Kiss was kind of hanging out there. But she told me about a place called Max's Kansas City, and I'd never heard of it. And now Max's used to be a club for Andy Warhol's art crowd.
Right.
Okay. And then as the celebrities started becoming friends with other celebrities and so on, Mick Jagger, David Bowie, Iggy Pop, Alice Cooper, they all started hanging out there as the fringe of Andy Warhol's art crowd because of Salvador Dali, things like, he was affiliated with Alice Cooper and all of that. So little by little, Max's became more of a rock crowd and less of the art crowd, and it was a rock club. So she made an arrangement, a date I would meet her there, and she would take me into the club and show me the club. And this was my first trip down the rabbit hole, so to speak, as I like to say. And I haven't looked back since. The Ramones hung out there. All the bands who played there hung out there. Wayne County, the Tough Darts, the Fast. Some of the guys from the Dolls would hang out there. Pretty much anybody who was everybody as part of the New York rock scene. That it was fringing punk and rock, all part of that crowd. And then she introduced me to a guitar player from the Martian Rock Band. His name was Sebi Castle back then. Now he's known as Sebastian Black, and he's like a psychic medium, and he's still operating as such. She introduced me to him. And he says, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a bass player." And he goes, "Oh, really?" He goes, "You got a pretty cool look." And guess what? In our conversation, it was like talking to Gene. He had the same interest I did in science fiction movies.
Oh,
like Day the Earth Stood Still, and the old the cliffhangers that they used to show in the movies when our parents were young. The Republic serials, Commander Cody, the Purple Monster, Dr. Satan, all of these, the cliffhangers. And so we clicked it off right away. And so the chemistry was right there. And he says, "You got a really good look. You have a better look than the guy we have. So why don't you come and see us play? And then we'll talk after that." And I said, "All right, fine." So they played one show, and I saw them, and they were musically it was cool. There really wasn't much of a show to them. Nothing super visual. Sebastian wore a purple jumpsuit, and he came out of a big silver box with a red lightning on it. Like the Ziggy Stardust lightning. And that was, the drummer had plexiglass see-through drums, and he wore a silver lame a suit like that, like a disco suit, but silver lame. And there really wasn't much to their show. So we talked about it, and he said, "Why don't you come up to our loft and I'll show you the songs." So I did that. He showed me the songs, and I wasn't really that good of a bass player yet. I was still learning. I never took any formal lessons. So he was very patient, and he taught me the songs. And looking back now, they're very, very, very easy songs. It was cross between rock, punk, space, like that music. And so in the first song, "Take Me to Your Leader," we have these parts where we play. We stop, and he'd say, the drummer, he's from whatever planet or space. I don't remember what all the lyrics were. And blah, 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 blah. And he'd say, and the bass player, he's from Mercury. Okay, now I'm from Mercury. What could I possibly be if Mercury is the hottest planet in the solar system? How could I come from Mercury? I mean, it was a 3-syllable planet. He didn't say Jupiter or Uranus or anything. There was, and he was from Mars. He was one of the songs we had was the greatest magician in the galaxy. That's what he was. He was the greatest magician in the galaxy, and he had magic tricks that we would do on stage, like the stage magic. So, and he showed me how to do the gags, the tricks. So Mercury. Well, I sat down in my basement in Brooklyn. I had a little table, a vanity table with a pop-up mirror, like you would have in any movie production theater, And I experimented with different kinds of makeups and things. And my favorite Universal monster was the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Mm-hmm.
I always liked the reptilian guy, the lizard, the dinosaur guy. And I'm trying to think, okay, well, the planet Earth, the hottest places on Earth still have life. The deserts, at least the American Southwest deserts, there are lizards that live there. So I said, okay, well, since the creature's like a lizard, I'll try and be a lizard guy. And I kind of blended my influence from Kiss, and it was a cross between Gene and Ace, I guess you might say. And so I got a black spandex Capezio bodysuit, which is what the ballet dancers wore. And I put rhinestones on it. I tried to copy what Ace's costume looked like on a Kiss Alive.
Okay.
And it has all these rhinestones of shooting stars and little galaxy things like that. So I did that all over this outfit. And I got this makeup that was like a frosted green highlight, which women would put up eyeshadow over their eyes.
Right.
I would get up maybe 5, 6, 7 tubes. They're little tubes. They come in of this frosty green makeup. So everywhere my skin was exposed, I would put this green makeup on and up my neck and all over my face.
Oh my God.
And I would cover my eyebrows with derma wax, and I would draw them up like Spock. So up here, I did blue over the eyes, and the rest of the skin was like a frosted green color, like a mint green. And then I would put a streak of silver in my hair, and of course Gene would spit blood, so his mouth would be red with the blood. So I think, well, let me try and go over the top with this, and I got a little bottle of green food coloring. All it takes is 1 or 2 drops on your tongue, and the entire inside of your mouth is green. And I have pictures of this. Like that, and so I became this like a reptilian character, and since when I showed up and I showed him Sebastian what my character was, he's like, wow. He goes, now I have to match that, because he wasn't doing any makeup like that. So now he painted his face white, and he had these chevron designs on his face and like that, and around his mouth. So now we started to match. It was like a friendly one up each other.
Right.
Well, you did that, all right, now I got to do something else, and you did that, now I got to do something else. So we're like that. So we have created now theatrical space creatures, and Sebastian used to shoot fire out of the headstock. He had a flying V, and he put extra wings on it, and he would shoot fire out of the headstock of the guitar. I said, wow, how do you do that? And he showed me how the gag works. And I said, you know what? I'd like to be able to do that too, but I can't do it out of my base because the neck is too long. So, well, everybody who knows the Spider-Man character.
Of course.
When Spider-Man goes to shoot the webbing, he presses the center of his palm and it shoots out from by the wrist. So I adapted that idea. The thing is, it's a powder, and it's called dragon's breath. Okay? If you pour it on a table in a little pile, it's like a yellow powder. It's inert. You can throw a match on it and it won't burn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It only burns. It's just like when sometimes you can use baking flour as an explosive accelerant. It only burns if it's in the air.
Okay.
If it's spread out in a powder in the air, it forms a huge ball of fire. See, so if it's lay on the table, you light it, it won't burn.
It won't burn. Okay.
If you go and shoot it like a cloud, it creates this huge fireball. Okay, so I had the idea to do that, and then I need another way to light it, because what I did was I had silver cocktail gloves, and I'd put the device under the glove in the palm of my hand, like this, like Spider-Man, and I put a little straw on the end of it. It's like the size of a nasal spray bottle.
Mhm.
Okay,
Maybe a little bit smaller, like the same principle
just
as nasal
squeeze it.
spray, but it shoots powder. And I'd run the straw up through my finger, and it was a little hole in the glove, and the straw would come out like that. So I used something called flash paper, which all stage magicians use. They go like this with their hand, and there's a thing of flames in their hand. So that's my igniter. And Gene had candles up by his amp, so I had candles on my amp. And so I could use, Sebastian was doing something on one side, misdirection. You use stage magic. He's doing something while I'm setting this up, and I'm doing something while he's setting that up. And so he would do something to get the audience over there, and I would get the flesh paper in my hand, and I would use the candle to light it. And as I bring my hand across like this, there would be this big thing of flames in my hand, and then I would aim my hand like this, and I would shoot. I'd squeeze, and the powder would shoot out of my fingertip and make this huge fireball.
Oh, that's crazy.
So we both had the ability to shoot fire one way or another like that. And of course, Gene spit blood, so I had to try and do something that was gross. And if you take a couple of sips of beer, it's going to foam up in your mouth. And if you have green food color in your mouth, this all turns this green foam.
Oh my God! Oh
So if
my
you
God!
look, it's like a rabid animal, and I open my and I go like this, and all this green Irish green foam come out of my mouth, and everybody in the audience was like, "Oh my God, what the hell is he doing?" Oh, like that. But I'm telling you, for the shock value, it was worth it. It was worth every penny of it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So yeah, this is what we did. So and then of course. Where I was always thinking, what else can we do? What else can we do? What else can we do? And I remembered that in the 60s, the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West concert halls, they would have light shows behind the band while the band was playing. If everybody's like smoking pot and taking LSD, they're tripping out. So they would put like an overhead projector back by the soundboard, like your teacher would use when you're doing it in school. And they would put a piece of plastic film on it, and they would put these colored oils. And they would put another plastic sheet over it and smush it down, and it would make all the colors swirl around. So in that same principle, I borrowed my dad's 8mm movie projector, and I had ordered these little reels, 8mm reels of black and white film. They used to sell them in the back of the monster magazines and the comic books. Just a few minutes scenes from Creature from the Black Lagoon, or Commander Cody, or Day the Earth Stood Still. And while Sebastian was doing something, I was working with the camera, and I would turn it on, and we would show projections on the wall behind us.
Okay.
Of these, we're trying to be like visionaries. Nobody was doing this.
Wow.
What else can we bring to the table to add something theatrical to the show?
Shock. That's right. Shocking.
And science fiction entertainment like that.
Nice.
And we caught the attention of somebody from Main Man Management, David Bowie's management, which was the photographer, Lee Blackchilders. And Lee fell in love with us. He goes, "You guys are so Ziggy Stardust, I have to bring David to come see you." So we were hoping David would come and see us. But first he goes, "I got to do a photo session. So I got to show David what you guys look like." So we set up a photo session in our loft. And that's one of the pictures that made it into Rock Scene magazine was us in our loft. And to have the photo credit Lee Blackchilders at that time was a very high mark.
Okay.
Because he was David Bowie's management. So that was a feather in our cap that we were really hoping would. David never did get to come and see us, but still it was prestigious to have Lee take our pictures. And he loved my makeup. He's like, "You guys are fabulous." And he was tied in with Wayne County and the trans crowd, I guess you might say, back early in its infancy back then. So that was my introduction, was through the Martian Rock Band, and now I was a seasoned veteran of playing the Max's Kansas City and subsequently the CBGB's rock scene.
Okay.
Like that. So I could go into the clubs and they knew who I was. Even if I didn't have all that makeup on, they knew who I was.
Wow.
So, and Kiss, I have to say, Kiss was a direct influence because of that.
Yeah.
So I was like, the spaceman aspect of Ace, but the horror aspect, the
Of
creature as of Gene. Yeah, exactly.
Gene, right.
I don't know if Gene knows that, but
Yeah, so you know, Rick, if we fast forward in time, we know that around the mid-70s, you know, the band Sin was formed in New York, New Jersey, you know, coming out of the ashes of club circuit bands like Virgin and Lust. So how did all that come about?
I like that you did your research homework.
Of course.
That's very satisfying, I have to say. Thank you. I was working in a store, clothing store, in the West Village on 8th Street, which was a very popular area at that time. You know, amongst the tourist and the rock crowd, music crowd, a lot of fashion stores were there and whatnot. And it was a few doors down from Electric Lady Studios, where Eddie Kramer used to work with Kiss and Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and all of that. You know, I mean, if I stood up the front door of our store and just looked to the left, I could see Electric Lady a couple of doors down from there, like that. And so one day this guy walks in, a long-haired guy, and his girlfriend or his wife, and we struck up a conversation. And he says, "Well, you know, you got a very cool rock look." He goes, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a bass player." Now we're about to step into something too. I replaced the bass player from Martian Rock Band.
Okay.
Now I'm about to replace the bass player in Virgin. Okay. I had seen a picture of Virgin in Rock Scene magazine. And this guy is just telling me, I said, "What band are you in?" He goes, "Virgin." And I said, "Oh, you guys took the picture down by the Jersey Shore?" He goes, "Yeah, that's us." I said, "Yeah, I saw your picture. That's pretty cool." He says, "Well, we're looking to replace the bass player. So that would be number 2. I said, "Okay." And we set up an audition. I didn't have a car at the time. So I said, let's do it on neutral ground. You're in Jersey, I'm in Brooklyn. How about we just do it in New York? I mean, New York had tons of rehearsal studios everywhere. So, you know, given the demographic of all the rockers that were there. And so I learned a bunch of cover songs, Kiss songs, Alice Cooper songs, David Bowie songs, Mata Hoople songs, whatever. And so I go into the building where we're going to rehearse. And then I go into the men's room first, and I put on a little bit of eyeliner, like on my eyes, like that. You know, kind of get my hair, just get ready like that. And this 6'2" tall blonde guy, with a rock haircut, he looked like a cross between Alice Cooper and David Bowie. You know, I didn't know who he was. I said, "Hi." "Well, hi. You know, you here? We play with somebody?" "Yeah, I came to audition for a band." "Oh, okay. Well, good luck to you." "Thank you." Like that, you know. And he's touching up his hair and his eyeliner, whatever. And he left the bathroom, and then a few minutes later, I left the bathroom, and I walk into the rehearsal room, and he's standing there. It was Ian Chris, was the singer, like that. And so we ran through a bunch of the songs, and he's stepping into my personal comfort zone in the same way I could describe this as like when Kiss would perform. Gene and Ace would do something where like Gene is like straddling Ace's leg, like that, or like, and he was doing that to me while I'm playing. I'm thinking to myself, "Wow, this is pretty cool," but I was getting nervous because I never had a guy get that close to me, you know. And he's standing there, and he's got his hands on his hips, and he's looking down at me like this as I'm playing, and he's smiling. It's like, "Yeah, this cool, ain't it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's cool." I didn't know if he was straight or not. You know, I was getting nervous, but he was as straight as it comes. But this was showmanship. This was,
course,
you know, rock and roll. You know, like that, the rock and roll attitude. And he liked me. You know, he liked the way my presentation, the way I presented myself, and the way I would stand when I was playing, how I physically interpret what I'm playing. And he told me later, he goes, "The guitar player didn't want me. He didn't like me." He goes, "This guy sucks. He's terrible." And he goes, "You know what? I like what he's got. I want him in the band. So do whatever it takes. Work with him. Teach him the songs. I want this guy in the band." So Ian was the second person to give me a chance, a crack at it, like that. You know, for which I'm eternally grateful. And they put me in the band, and I was now a member of the band Virgin. So we had done a couple of sets, shows as Virgin. And then since they changed membership, and I was a new guy, they said, you know, how about we call it something else? And then we changed the name to Lust for about 2 or 3 weeks. We did 1 or 2 shows as Under Lust, and we changed members again. The guitar player that brought me into the band, he got fired, and we brought another guy in who looked like Glenn Buxton from Alice Cooper's band. He was a great guitar player. And so we did it as Lust. And then it was sometime after that, we're getting to like the summer of, I want to say 1970, late 76 into early 77. And I came up with the name Sin. You know, I wanted something quick, easy. It was like Kiss, Sin.
So you came up with the name. You
could remember, yeah, like that. And I kind of drew it wasn't the snake logo yet, but it was an S that kind of flowed like a Z, like that. And I drew what looked like a not a hooker, but a sensuous woman leaning on the end, like that, with her elbow. And I showed it to them, and they liked it. And then I think Ian or one of the guys said, "Why don't you? What about let's play with the Adam and Eve thing? You know, with the sin, like the snake." And I went, "All right." So I drew the logo with the snake, and then over the eye, the dot on the eye was an apple with a bite in it. So that was our initial presentation of Sin, and that's where the name Sin was born. And then eventually, we brought in the drummer who I met at Max's Kansas City when I was hanging out with. Was a guy named Stan Bassell or Basil Stanley. Basil knew Gene and Paul because they went to college together.
Oh, wow.
So he was all good to go to be in a rock and roll band, a flashy theatrical rock and roll band. And sometimes he would play drums with the platform boots on, which is not practical, but he did it anyway. And he was a big guy. He was like 6'2", big, broad-shouldered guy, and they had the haircut, the whole schmear. And he was another Jewish guy. He was a wise guy, like that. And he used to call me the Boy Wonder, like the Batman character. Robin was the Boy Wonder.
Yeah.
Because I was always coming up with ideas about how to do things. So he'd say, "You're like the Boy Wonder."
The Boy Wonder.
The idea guy, like that. I was always thinking ahead. What can we do next? What can we do next?
Lovely.
So like that. And so I didn't have a car. Basil lived in Queens. So he would come through Brooklyn. He'd pick me up at my house. We'd drive down through Manhattan. We'd stop in Chinatown, get some Chinese food, and then we'd drive into Jersey to rehearsal. And we were Sin. And, like I said, we did Alice Cooper's set. Ian wore, a girl that would, a dancer that had like an 8-foot boa constrictor snake.
Oh.
And she would come to the show and she'd put the snake on him, and we would do an Alice Cooper set.
Wow.
Of Alice Cooper song. And Ian would put on the makeup like Alice. Black around the eyes, up and down like that. So we did Alice Cooper, we did Mott the Hoople, we did Queen, we did Aerosmith, we did Kiss. We did the Mott the Hoople live medley, the way they did it, like that. We just do it, just like the record, like that. And so the only other band on the Jersey circuit that was like us was Harlow. We were like Harlow Jr. Because we did almost the same songs. Harlow did even some more songs like from the late 60s, early 70s, like Yardbirds and Animals and things like that in their set. And they were one of the best looking bands on the circuit, and platform boots and stacked hair. And all the girls were just follow these guys. And since we were kind of like them, we would kind of get their overflow of the girls come to see us. So, we did okay, like that. And we all knew each other. All these bands all knew each other. So
it was the same circuit. That's right.
It wasn't like a rivalry thing. It was, a friendly rivalry thing like that. And Twisted Sister, meanwhile, had moved from Jersey out to Long Island.
Okay.
So Twisted Sister was doing their glam thing on Long Island. We were doing our glam thing in Jersey, and we were kind of in Harlow's shadow. They were, we were doing all the British glam, the British wave of glam, that was coming over. So
this is fascinating. So fascinating, man. Unbelievable.
And at this time, of course, I was introduced to Angel. Now, the first album, you couldn't really tell what they looked like because it was just black and white pictures in the studio that Niels Lozower took of them during the recording of the album. The second album, Hell of a Band, there's all these pretty guys dressed in white on the cover, and I'm like, oh, now I can see what they look like.
Right.
And they're standing in the palm of a woman's hand, and they're all chained together. And the image of the angel head, the pharaoh angel head, they call it George. The two inside pieces came out like red horns. And the back, there's this picture of them. You know, as Barry's leaning like on this guy, and Mickey's like this, looking dreamy, and Punky's looking all fucking cool.
Funky Frank. That's right.
Yeah.
And I stood there in the record store looking at this album cover and went, that's the game changer.
Yeah.
I was looking for an identity of who I could be in music. And when I saw Punky Meadows and Mickey Jones, I went, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm going to follow that look.
They got it.
I went out and I got a white Capezio bodysuit. I had platform boots. The heels were like eight inches tall. The heels were 8 inches tall. Platforms were like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 inches. White leather and python checkerboard. And I had a girl make me a 3-layer white cape. I was trying to copy Mickey's costume. I didn't have it all committed to memory. And I had my hair cut like him. And I played a precision bass like him. And I have some pictures of me playing with Sid in that outfit. And there was a picture of Angel when they were coming out on stage. They come out of what they call the telephone booths, the boxes.
Yeah.
They would appear out of nowhere. There's a picture of Mickey coming out, and he's got his arms. I don't know if you can see. He's got his arms up like this. So I had somebody take a picture of me between sets at one of the clubs we were playing at, and I stood up like that, and I put my arms up, and you put the two pictures together, like, all right, Rik Fox is trying to make believe he's Mickey
They're
Jones.
identical.
I was a little too obvious about that, but, you know. Over the years, I mean, I actually met Angel, and I became friends with him. So when they had kicked Mickey out of the band after the On Earth as It Is in Heaven album, the third album, see, I was friends still with J.R. Smalling, who was Kiss's tour manager.
Yeah.
You wanted the best, you got the best.
Yeah.
They announced it. That was J.R. Jr. So I met him we were hanging out in a club, and I think I had a white baseball jacket on, satin baseball jacket, and I looked kind of like Mickey, and people would mistake me for either Mickey or Punky at this point now. And I said to JR, I just read in Circus Magazine they kicked Mickey out of Angel. What happened? Because there was no news about it, just that he got fired. And he was one of the founding members of Angel. And he goes, yeah, he got kicked out of the band. He looked at me and goes, hey, you know what? He goes, you play bass, right? I said, yeah. He goes, he was working out of Lieber Krebs' office, Aerosmith's office, their management. He says, come to my office. I want to make some phone calls. I said, seriously? He goes, yeah, I want to make some phone calls. He goes, you kind of look a little like Mickey. So, and at this point, I think Peter had already split up with Lydia, and she was dating Mickey.
Oh, okay.
I think she mentions that in her book. And so I went up to the Aerosmith's office, and I met JR again, and he was on the phone right in front of me talking to somebody in California. So I got a guy here, looks just like Mickey Jones. You know, if he's a bass player, you know, maybe you can, you know, get him to. And he said, yeah, Rik Fox. And then went, oh yeah, I think Punky met him, because but you know, like I said, I met him a couple of times after the shows, like that. And it took a couple of days of phone calls. He says they already got somebody they're working with, which was Felix Robinson.
Right.
See, now their Angels tour manager, Bill Sherrick, who's now a friend of mine, Bill was managing 707, which was the band that had Felix in it. So he was already on deck. It was part of kind of like the family, so to speak.
Right.
It was convenient. Felix came in. He started writing material already with Angel for the White Hot album. So it was, you know, they didn't have the time and the luxury and the liberty to audition guys and do that. Felix was already there. So they had Felix in the band, you know, and that worked out fine. You know, I still had my Angel look like that. We'd go to Angel concerts, and people would stand outside. People go, wow, you guys in the band?
They were mistaken.
So, and you know, a couple of times I was sitting in the front row for Angel. This is like right before I met Punky. And Punky's playing, and he's looking down at me, and he looks at me again like that, and he looks across the stage over at Mickey, and he's looking at me.
Thinking it was it.
You know, and after the show, one of the shows, they went out to dinner, and Punky used to carry a leather shoulder bag, and I had a leather shoulder bag. I had a scrapbook with me. I had pictures of bands I played with in there, and I showed him some of the pictures. And Punky's wife at the time, Fran, comes over, and she goes over the show. She goes, she's looking at the pictures of me. She goes, Punky, when did you take these pictures? I don't remember these. He goes, that's not me, that's Rick. She goes, no, that's you. She goes, I was able to fool Punky Meadows' wife. Lovely. He goes, no, Fran, that's Rick. He goes, oh my God, you guys look like twins. So,
oh my goodness.
No,
And there were a couple of opportunities over the years when I thought I would be able to finally get in
A
Angel.
close call.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
several times.
Really
Well, Greg
close.
Giuffria asked me right before I joined Steeler
Right.
if I wanted to join Angel. So it was right there, like that fork in the road. Do I want to join my dream band or the hottest up and coming band in LA? Which,
There you go.
right.
There you
You
go.
know,
We're coming there.
I obviously joined Steeler.
There you go.
Well, yeah, because right now we're on a musical time travel journey right here, and it's
Yeah.
interesting to hear the evolution of your musical journey. Now we've covered the 70s, and now we're jumping forward into the 80s, specifically 1982, when you were part of the band WASP after you moved to LA. So can you tell us how you connected with Blackie Lawless at that time?
Okay, we go back to the store I was working in the Village in Manhattan, and at this time, some other people came in and struck up a conversation with me. I had already been playing the Jersey club circuit with a band called the E. Walker Band, and we played a lot of the same clubs on the circuit that Twisted Sister did, all the big tri-state, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey clubs, and upstate New York like that. So I had done that for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. I toured in Canada for about a week up in Toronto, played all the name clubs up there, and it came back. And then I left the band and I joined another band with a guitar player that was on one of Mike Varney's Shrapnel Records label. And we formed a band called Aggressor. And on my times when I wasn't playing, I would be working at the shop in the Village like that. And these kids come walking in. They were vacationing from California. They said, "We're here to see Twisted Sister play at some festival." I don't remember what festival it was. I said, "Twisted Sister?" I said, "You flew from Los Angeles to see Twisted Sister?" They said, "Yeah." And I said, "That's impressive." I said, "I know those guys. They're friends of mine." They went, "Really? You know Twisted Sister?" It's nothing to get excited about. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're in California, you see it in the magazines,
Yeah.
there was no MTV yet, like that. And so I said, yeah, Mark Mendoza is like a big brother to me. I knew Mark when he was in the Dictators. And there was a few times when Sin would rehearse in the studios in Manhattan, the Dictators were rehearsing across the hall in the other studio. And they heard us. So when they were done, Mark and Ross the Boss would come and hang out with us like that. And Handsome Dick, Manitoba, Richard, like that. And so Mark would stay and hang out with us. So he'd say, "Hey, but you come and see me play sometime. And he said, "Yeah, like." So we got to be pretty good friends. And so the conversation then went to Kiss. And I said, "I know those guys too." Just casual, like we're talking now. And they're like, "Wow, you know the guys in Kiss?" And I told him the story, like I told you, with Peter Criss and his sister, and I dated his sister Joanne, like that. And these guys were like flipping out. And they said, "Well, what do? You look like a rock guy." And I said, "I'm a bass player." And they looked at each other and went, "We know a band in California you'd probably be perfect for." I said, you think I'm going to leave here and go to California?" And they said, "Well, it's he's a pretty well-known guy out there. He's actually from New York. He played a little bit with the New York Dolls." And I went, "Well, I know those guys." But I said, "What's his name?" And they said, "Blackie Lawless." I said, "Never heard of him." So they said, "Well, give us your number and we'll just give it to him." And I went, "All right, fine." And do you have a picture? I had a picture in my bag, a picture of me playing with Aggressor, I think it was, or E. Walker. And I gave him the picture, and that was it. I never saw them again. They didn't hear from them. I guess they went to the shows and went back to California. And about within a month, 2, maybe 3 weeks later, I started getting phone calls from this guy, Blackie Lawless.
Blackie. Okay. Wow.
He says, yeah, so obviously they gave my phone number to him. They gave him the picture. He goes, "Yeah, I'm looking at your picture. You got a really good look." And he says, "I played with the Dolls, a couple of shows, and I'm also from New York and like that." And I said, "I got to confess." I said, I played the scene. I never heard of you. I don't know who you are." He goes, "Well, we got a really good thing going here." He goes, I played with Arthur Kane, Killer Kane, like that. And I have a band called Sister." And I went, "Okay." I said, "But I don't know what you sound like. Can you send me a tape?" He says, "Yeah." So he sent me a demo tape of songs. I said, "I, on the other hand, have nothing to send you. I'm in a cover band. We don't make demo tapes because we're playing covers in the clubs." I said, "I have advertising from the newspapers, ads. I'm playing here, I'm playing there, this band with Rik Fox from this band like that." He says, "Yeah, okay, you can send me that." But so, he sent me the tape and I was like, wow, these guys are heavy, like heavy, like Kiss heavy, like early Kiss heavy.
Yeah.
Harley Hart, Sex Drive, Mr. Cool, Don't Know Who I Am, Silver Rain, which was his ballad, like a John Lennon ballad, like that. These are pretty heavy songs. So he, over several phone calls, he convinced me to come to California and audition for the band. It wasn't called WASP yet. It was still called Sister. And they had the name was just, a lowercase letters in a pentagram that was on fire. That was their logo. When you audition for a band, reasonably speaking, you generally are within driving distance to audition for, you audition and you go home. This was going to be a leap of faith to go from New Jersey all the way to California just to audition for a band. And so they paid for my plane ticket, which I still have. And I landed in LAX on February 4th, 1982. And they picked me up from the airport. And Blackie's head was like taller than everybody else's head in the airport. Like as they're coming towards me in the crowd, him and Randy were the tallest guys. Tony was there, Tony Richards, Randy Piper, and Mike Solon. Mike was Blackie's driver at the time because Blackie's car wasn't working. And Mike Solon, for the trivia people, is the brother of Eddie Solon, who was working with Ace Frehley and Kiss at the early time like that. And Mike is also the bartender in the WASP video, Blind in Texas. Mm-hmm. When they come in and they go, "We're here to play the gig," and the bartender goes, "What's a gig?" And he pours the acid out of the shot glass on the bar. That's Mike Solon.
That's him. Okay.
That's the guy who used to drive me and Blackie to rehearsal when Blackie didn't have a car.
Man. I love these stories, man. The way you tell them, it's unbelievable.
So the first night, it was jet lag. The second night, Blackie took me out to the Troubadour Club, and all these rockers are hanging out there. It's just I'm just new from New York. I met Kevin DuBrow. I met Frankie Banelli. I met David Lee Roth was there, from Van Halen. Guys from Motley Crue hanging out. All the band guys are all hanging out. There was a front bar, and you go inside the room, the main room, and there's a bar in there, and the stage like that. And the place was packed, shoulder to shoulder, packed. Blackie's kind of introducing me to various people. I said, I'm here to audition for Blackie's band. They went, "Oh, okay. Good luck." Thank you. Like that. And then, so like the third or fourth night was February 6th. Mike drove us down to Randy's studio in Anaheim, and it was a huge, gigantic room. Lynch's band, Exciter, was rehearsing in there with Mick Brown. This was before Dokken. And so we had all the way in the back. So I sat there in a chair like this, and they went through 5 songs. On Your Knees, and Hellion, BAD, Sleeping in the Fire, and School Days. And I sat there, guys. I'm telling you, it was like being back in the loft with Kiss.
Oh, wow.
Same kind of flashback. Wow, these guys are heavy. Like loud heavy. Like Kiss loud heavy. Blackie was playing guitar, obviously, at the time. Randy played guitar. Blackie, he had an iron cross, like a knight's cross. Black iron cross guitar. Yeah, Tony was an animal on the drums. They were like cannons, like that. He had a green plexiglass kit, like John Bonham, but drums, but in green. And so they went through the set once or twice. And I said, "All right, come on up." And I plugged in. They had an amp there. I plugged in, and I followed along. The songs were fairly easy enough. I come from a different school of bass playing. Mountain, Uriah Heep, Humble Pie. Bass players that played a melody line.
Yeah, right.
In Los Angeles, it was the style of music was changing, where the guitar players would play the moving lines, and the bass player just played eighth notes and quarter notes. Just dun, 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 dun. And the guitars would do all the passing tones. So me, I'm like, one of my influences, Felix Pappalardi, I was proud to say I became friends with. Guys like that who would play a walking bass line, melodic bass line. Blackie's going, "Can you play it simpler? Play it simpler. It's only 3 chords. How much simpler can it be?" He goes, "Well, don't walk so much through it. Just keep the root down. Play the root notes like that." Oh, all right. So I auditioned actually over 2 days. The process took 2 days. And by February 8th, they went, all right, you got the gig. So you're in the band like that. And the only song I really got away with playing a really cool bass line is School Days.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think I like to say I was channeling a cross between Alice Cooper's Muscle of Love and Kiss's Love Gun.
Okay.
Gene's bass line, Love Gun.
Right.
Because if you listen to that's on that first original WASP demo, you could hear the walking, jazzy, swinging, swaggering bass line in there. It sounds like a cross between Muscle of Love and Love Gun. And that was pretty much the only song I got away with playing a kind of a bass line in. Everything else, Blackie had me play simple,
Mm-hmm.
like that. And so I started to write with them, and we did a song called Master of Disaster. And I wrote the second verse, and I arranged the time change with Tony on drums before we go into the solo. It was like a halftime dirge, and then we'd pick it back up and go back into the main rhythm of the song. Now, Blackie never used Master of Disaster after I was out of the band. And it wasn't until some fans, now we have the internet, some fans pointed out to me, wow, that sounds a lot like Wild Child. I went back and I listened to Wild Child, and I listened to Master of Disaster, and it's very similar.
Oh, wow.
The verses are very similar. And so Blackie's not a guy to throw away ideas. He probably saved it. I'm speculating, he saved the idea and just rewrote it into something else.
Mm-hmm.
But so we got to the point of doing the demo. Blackie got a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and we recorded it live in the ambience of the room sound. No overdubs, nothing like that. He said it was live 3-track. That's what I remember him saying. And so we recorded that, and he was very happy. He was mixing. He was transferring it from the reel-to-reel to cassettes now. And I had a friend who worked at A&M Records in New York that Blackie and he knew each other. He said, if you ever get in a band, give me right of first refusal. Let me hear what you're doing. So maybe I can sign you guys. I went, all right. So I told Blackie this. He goes, that's good. So he's running off demo tapes on the cassettes. I said, so what do you think? And he looks at me. He goes, I'm really happy. I'm really, really very happy the way this worked out. Like that. So I was officially in the band. And at one point, he says, we have to have something. It's not going to be Sister anymore. It's got to be something completely new. We need a new name. We need a new image. He goes, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I haven't even. Okay, we got songs, but we need a new image like that. And I remember saying that. So I was out at the laundromat around the corner one day doing my laundry. I'm looking in the paper, and there was that first promotional picture of Mel Gibson in Road Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Walking down the road with the dingo, the dog next to him. And I hadn't seen the movie yet, and he's got the shotgun in the holster and the leather jacket with the sleeve missing, and he's got the tools hanging. And I went back to the house. I said, Blackie, I said, look at this picture. That's a cool image. I said, in 77, 78, we had a band from Australia come over called Heaven. And they all looked like this, like Road Warrior guys, leather and tattered and like that. They look like Road Warrior characters. He goes, no, we'll scare off the record labels. We can't look like that. He goes, we got to get them with the songs first, and then we'll work on the image. All right. So, but he got to the point where he called up Don Atkins, who was a photographer. Don shot Motley Crue. He shot a lot of bands, the Starwood bands that played there. And he called Don and said, I got a band. I finally got a bass player. Let's do a photo session. So we went to Don's parents' house. I think it was in Whittier. And he put up a blue tarp, the same tarp he used for Motley Crue, behind us. And we did a photo session. And now looking back at the pictures, you got me looking kind of like this Punky Meadows, glamour boy look, I guess. And the other three guys look like, Blackie's like, Randy's like, Tony's,
and you're an angel.
Like a bunch of, like a bunch of convicts, truck drivers. Blackie's trying to look scary, like that. And, grimacing for the camera. And I'm looking at the picture going, well, hammer, saw, nails, milk. What doesn't fit here? But that was our first pictures like that. And I guess Blackie was still happy at that point. So, this is April 15th, I think we took the pictures, 82. May comes. Now, I'm starting to hang out a little bit with the crowd. getting to be a little bit more, because I didn't know anybody. I'm trying to be a little bit more, earn some friends, people in the crowd, you know, from LA there. And I would occasionally, because I was staying at Blackie's house, I had no place else to stay. And I would occasionally bring a date home from the Rainbow. Well, I didn't know this until Randy told me after I was out of the band, after WASP's first show at the Troubadour. Blackie and I would go out to the clubs together, and he would hit on the girls, try to bring a girl home. And he would sit in his throne and pick up his guitar and serenade the girls and play for them, then take them up into his loft and, you know, do the boom boom thing. And now sometimes he would try to approach a girl and pick her up, and she would say no. Somewhere along the line, now I didn't know this happened. This girl would then come to me and go, you know, hey, you want to get together? And I'm like, sure. And I would bring her back to Blackie's house. If you see where I'm going with this, Blackie now sees the girl that turned him down earlier in the evening.
Right.
You know, and it's like, it's almost like I'm rubbing it in his face.
Right.
But I'm not aware of this. This is what Randy told me. He goes, Blackie, you had no idea. You were bringing girls back to the house that already said no to him. Then he's got to see the same girl who told him no in his house. His ego is going to take a massive hammering. And this is apparently what had happened, because I spoke to one of the girls who was very popular in the scene that I brought back to the house. And I said, did Blackie try to pick you up before you came back with me? She goes, oh, yeah. I told him no. I wasn't interested. I said, but then you came with me back to his house? She goes, yeah. So I said, that didn't sit very well. Now it makes sense. So at the end of May, he stops talking to me.
Oh, wow.
Like cold. No conversation. I mean, the guy was up until this point, he was friendly. We were, you know, I'm in a band. We're talking every day. Now he's like not talking to me. So, you know, just 1 or 2 days, this goes by. And he finally says, you know, we got to talk. I'm like, all right. No, I've never heard that phrase before. We got to talk. That's an indication that something's wrong. And he sits down with me and goes, it's not working out. He goes, Randy's not happy. Tony's not happy. It's not gelling. It's not. What about the demo? You were real happy about the demo. He goes, it's not working out. So he goes, if you want to stay in LA, you want to continue like with a you know, in a career in music, I would recommend you stay here in LA like I did when I left, you know, the Dolls. He goes, but you can't stay here at my house. Okay. So and you are to surrender all your copies of the band pictures. I said, why? He goes, because they're my pictures. I paid for them and they're mine. So he knew I would not be able to have any proof to show that I was in the band. He knew what he was doing. And so when he left the house, I got the negatives. I ran up to Sunset Boulevard and I made a few more copies. And I came back. And this time I hid some on the side outside the house because I had a room upstairs that he made for me at his house. I hid some of the pictures and I went back in the house and he was already come home. He saw that the negatives were gone. And he knew what I did. And he went ballistic. He flipped out, yelling and screaming. I mean, like I said, don't talk to me like that. I'm not a kid. He goes, those pictures don't belong to you. That's my property. Now give me what you got. And I had a couple with me, but I didn't stash. And I gave him the 2-3 pictures I had in the negatives. And he was furious with me. So while this had happened, meanwhile, I had become friends with some girls that lived up the street from the Whiskey. It's a famous apartment building. It was 1140 North Clark Street. This is where Motley Crue lived. Okay. It was almost like a party building. There were several other bands lived in the building. A lot of girls lived in the building. I came to LA to be models and movie stars and whatnot. Well, this apartment, there was a girl there who worked for an escort agency. The people from LA know who Madame Alex was and Heidi Fleiss and that whole scandal thing that went down. This girl worked for them. And the girl that I brought home to Black, she also had been working as an escort as well. So there was like 3 or 4 girls. It was a big 2-bedroom apartment. I told her what happened. I said, Blackie kicked me out of the band. I got no place to go. I'm cut loose. I don't know anybody here. She goes, all right, I'll come and get you. You come and stay at our apartment. and you can sleep on the couch until you get, on your feet like that. So that was my introduction to what they call the couch tour.
The couch tour. That's awesome.
And I didn't just slouch. I had a pretty decent upbringing, so I'd make use of myself. I would clean up, I'd vacuum the rugs, I'd do the dishes, I'd clean, like a houseboy, kind of thing like that. And she was running an electricity tap, extension line out of her apartment, out the balcony into the next apartment, which was where Nikki was staying. Because by this time, Motley Crue had all moved out. It was just Nikki by himself, and I had already met Tommy. And so this is where, because Nikki's electricity got shut off because he didn't pay his bill. So this girl, he was tapping electricity from her apartment like that, and a couple of times she'd ask me to go next door to ask him something. So that's how Nikki and I met like that. And then he was sleeping with Lita Ford. I walked in and he goes, yeah, come on in. And he pushed two love seats together to make like a little pit couch that he was sleeping in. And then when he jumped out, the blanket moved, and I looked over, and I see this blonde hair sticking out of the top of the blanket, and then she pulls it down like this.
It's Lita.
And I could see it. I said, I know those eyes. She pulled the blanket down. I went, Lita Ford?
Holy moly.
She goes, dude, you look familiar. I said, yeah, when you were in the Runaways, you played CBGBs in like 75. I said, I talked to you. I met you. I talked to you after the show. You and Jackie Fox. She goes, that's where you look familiar from.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
She was, of course, sleeping with Nikki at this time. And she goes, well, let's all go out to breakfast. And I said, I don't have any money. I'm broke. I said, Blackie just kicked me out of the band. And she goes, well, I'll take you out. She took me and Nikki out for breakfast. So that was pretty cool.
Good stories, man.
But while I was in WASP, okay, we're watching TV. Blacky's watching a baseball game one day. He's like this, watching the Yankees game on TV. And I had a phone call from somebody in New York. So we had long extensions on the cords. There was no cell phones then. We had a long extension. So I could walk around outside in the courtyard around, and it was a big tree there, avocado tree, and it was leaves everywhere, all over the sidewalk. So I'm walking around, I'm kicking leaves over as I'm walking around. I'm on the phone, and I kicked the leaf over, and it's like a yellow jacket, a hornet or something like that. And I stepped on it real quick, but I didn't kill it. I didn't smash it flat. It was still alive. But the stinger was moving on the back end of it like that. Like it was angry, And I remembered back to the TV show, The Green Hornet, that ran opposite Batman. And I went back in the house and I said, hey, Blackie. I said, I got an idea for a band name. He looks up, he goes, what? And I said, WASP. I said, I just stepped on one outside. I said, remember the Green Hornet logo and the stinger? It looked angry. It was like, he looks at the ceiling. He's like, yeah, I remember that. So that's a good idea. He goes, keep thinking like that. And he goes back to watching the Yankee game. A couple of nights later, we're at rehearsal. We finished rehearsal. So he gets us all together outside Randy's office. And he says, we got a new name for the band. I looked at him like that, and Randy and Tony go, what? And he goes, WASP.
There you go.
I was like, oh, cool. So you liked it. He goes, yeah. He goes, I like the way you told me about it. And Randy goes, well, I wanted to call the band Hellion, because that's what they call, little unruly bad kids in Texas. And I said, I think there already is a band in Hollywood called Hellion. So Tony, being Tony, he goes, WASP? He goes, who names a band after a bug? And I went, the Beatles?
There you go. Hello.
Scorpions? Like that. And Randy started laughing. He goes, yeah, okay, Scorpions. Even though the Beatles spell it B-E-A-T. But the word beetle, you think like an insect. And of course, scorpions like that.
The WASP is such a cool name. Such a cool name.
Says, that's it. That's it. We're now called. Yeah. So technically speaking, all four of us standing there at that point in time, we're all co-founders of a new band called WASP.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
And to this day, Blackie denies that ever happened.
Oh yeah. Wow. Okay.
And he says Rik was never in the band. Then he started to say, oh, well, he auditioned for us. We played it, a couple of times in rehearsal, and then it didn't work, and he was out of the band. Well, if that's true, then how do you explain me being at your house for 4 months?
Right. Yeah.
And the pictures and the demo. Like that, and I've run into a lot of angry Blackie fans, a lot of adversity, because they don't believe it. They believe whatever he says.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, even if he were to turn around and say, all right, Rik was in the band, they still probably wouldn't believe it.
It's done. That's right. Damage is done. That's right.
But that's how WASP was born.
Wow. Wow. So, Rik, let me just, I think you mentioned this before, but the next chapter in your fantastic career happened when, if I'm not mistaken, when you got to Steeler. So was that through your connection with Ron Keel that you got into Steeler?
Well, I didn't know Ron yet.
Okay.
I was at the Roxy one night that Steeler was playing, original lineup from Nashville. And I was hanging out with Eric Carr. He was, my friend Eric, and he asked me to introduce him to this girl, Bambi. Bambi is the girl I was telling you about that came back with me to Blackie's house.
Oh, wow.
She's the girl that turned Blackie down. Bambi had an episode at Roxy's apartment where she took a Quaalude and passed out while she was taking a bath.
Oof.
That she slid under the water like Whitney Houston.
Oh my goodness.
And she was not talking anymore. I was in another room. She was in Roxy's bathroom in the bathtub. And I ran in there and she was bubbles coming out. She was under the water, bubbles coming. So I scooped her up, brought her out later on Roxy's bed and covered her with a towel. And I shook her and I shook her and I shook. And then now the water starts coming out of her mouth. I didn't have to do CPR yet, but I got to just in time where she got coughed out some of the water and she came coherent again. And she says, "Oh, you saved my life." Wow. I said, well, if I wasn't here, that never would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out Eric asked me to introduce him to her, and they became a couple for a while. So Eric and Bambi were dating for a while, and then eventually Bambi wound up being the model on the cover of the Poison album, Open Up and Say Ah.
Oh, that's her. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Big tongue. That's Bambi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like that, and Bambi had also gone out with one of the guys in the band Heaven, so she dated a lot of rock stars. So she was fairly well known, like that. And so anyway, so we're at the Roxy. We're watching. I'm going to Eric. This singer, this guy Ron Keel. I didn't know it was his name yet. I'm like, this guy's gonna. The rest of the band was very good musically. They were bam. They were, but there was not much visual compared to all of the bands in Motley Crue, Rat, Black and Blue. These guys had like a show.
Yeah.
It looked like they were already signed. And Steeler didn't have that look. But Ron was like the rock star. There was something about Ron. I said, this guy's going to be somebody. He projects that. This guy's like a pro. And they came from Nashville. So you get guys that come from the Midwest and they have their idea of what they think is cool to do on stage. And then you get to like the coast, the New York or LA, and you try to do that on stage, and it kind of looks maybe a little hokey.
Yeah, it's not going to work. Yeah.
Your how do I say this? Your personal interpretation, what you think looks cool on stage, a certain move might not be taken seriously by the.
Yeah.
LA, everybody's jaded.
Right.
Everybody's like, okay, go ahead, impress me. Like that. So you're running from two different perspectives on this. I mean, like I said, they were very good musically. Ron was the show. Ron was the whole show, like that. And so that was that. And then sometime after that, I had put an ad in Music Connection magazine. They had a musicians classifieds. Now, I had already when you mentioned Hellion, and I had mentioned Hellion, I jammed with them a couple of times. I know that they were looking for a bass player or something, and I jammed with them, and we got along really well. The drummer dug my jokes, I made him laugh like that. And so it was a good feeling, but nothing really happened after that. And I spent 4 months rehearsing with WARLORD. I met them through a mutual friend. And to tie this back into Steeler, WARLORD, I had never played minor scale dark arrangements like these guys had. I mean, coming from playing in top 40 cover hard rock bands, the closest I got to that was a couple of Black Sabbath songs.
Right. Yeah.
All of WARLORD's material, every song was minor scales. It was like Dio meets Sabbath meets maybe a little bit of Rush, not fast Rush, but just very complex arrangements. And I had, like I said, I never took any lessons.
Yeah,
lessons.
definitely not your style.
Definitely. So they show me, and I'm looking at him going, man, how do you play that? You know, and he'd show me, and I'd play a couple of passes, and I got it. So it was very challenging for me, and so it would just make me a better player to learn this. Their drummer was fantastic. Mark Zonder was an incredible monster drummer, and the guitar player Bill Samis he reminded me a lot of Richie Blackmore. He kind of looked like Richie Blackmore. He played like Richie Blackmore. He stood like Richie Blackmore. So I was kind of digging this because I dug Rainbow and I dug Dio, you know, like that. So I made myself be comfortable with this kind of music. And you know, like I said, 4 months down the line, and they would address each other in their character names. Like one guy was Thunderchild, and the other guy was Destroyer. And I'm like, guys, we're not on stage. We're just us amongst ourselves.
We're buds.
How do you refer to each other as character names? We're just in rehearsal. I found that kind of curiously amusing. And I didn't have a character name yet. But I rehearsed with them for about 4 months, about the same amount of time I was with WASP. And I said to them one day, so, you know, when we get a singer, we're going to, you know, go out and do some killer live shows, right? And they're both like a deer in the headlights. Look, what live? What do you mean live? No, we're not playing live. I said, why not? He says, well, we're a recording band. We're going to record. We're not playing live. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me that 4 months ago? I said, I'm a live player. I live to perform. I'm an on stage guy, you know? Right. I said, well, no, we're not, we're just going to get a singer, but we're going to record. It's going to be like a recording project. I said, well, I'm sorry, guys. This ain't going to work for me. You know, I thank you for teaching me and learning a style that I wasn't familiar with, but I can't be in a band where I'm not going to play live. Just, you know, then I packed up my stuff and I left.
Okay.
You know, and years later, when WARLORD finally released some kind of CD set, I was sad to see Bill did some disparaging things about me, you know, saying Rik belongs in a band that plays really simple music that's more geared to his ability, like Steeler.
Oh,
and,
well,
you know,
okay.
And that wasn't necessary to say that, you know.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like that.
No
because
need.
by that time I had already been with my own band Sin, and we were like headlining clubs. So
that's right.
And we had songs that were a couple of songs that were almost Iron Maiden flavored. So I was playing complex bass lines like that as well. So it just anyway. So I had put this ad in Music Connection magazine, and Ron Keel contacted me to get back to your point. And he says, your name has been passed in front of me a couple of times. I need somebody that's got your look. Everybody talks about you look like a rock star, and that's what I need in the band. So come and meet me and like that. And so I went to meet him, and I walked into what they called the Steeler Mansion, which is kind of an inside joke because anybody who's been there knows what we mean. It's anything but a mansion. It was in one of the worst parts of Los Angeles.
Okay.
Okay. It was a completely African-American neighborhood.
Okay.
Steeler was the only white guys in the neighborhood. And it was 3 gutted storefronts. There's just like nothing in them except the support beams. And Ron had a little curtain area where he slept, had a mattress on some milk crates. Mark Edwards, who was now the new drummer in the band, he was slept over by the bathroom and a bunch of milk crates and a mattress on that. Their old bass player had left a waterbed in the kitchen area, which is where all the roaches were.
That was the mansion.
When we say Steeler Mansion, it was roaches everywhere. You know, you go to turn on the stove at night, and you can hear the roaches jumping off the stove and hitting the newspaper on the floor.
Oh my God!
Like that. So, you know, and it was a rehearsal room and another room on the side that I turned eventually into my room. And so I met with Ron, and we went into the rehearsal room, and it was just a drum riser. Now, Steeler was a self-contained band. They had their own truck, their own lights, their PA, the road crew, everything. They were like a touring band. They had everything. Well, Ron had fired the whole band, the whole lineup. Oh. So when he did that, there went all the equipment. That was another leap of faith. You know, to take a chance. You're one of the top metal bands in Los Angeles now for a year, and you let the whole band go. What were you thinking? He says, well, we showcased for every record label, and they passed on us.
Okay.
I've taken Steeler as far as it can go. We can't get past that glass ceiling because I can't compete with Motley Crue. I can't compete with Rat and bands like that. I need a band that looks like we're already signed rock stars on the next level. I want guys to look like we're already in albums and on tour. He says, so you came recommended to me like that. Here's a tape of our songs. Learn the songs, and then we'll talk from there. No promises. I said, all right. So I took the tape. I learned the songs. I've saved almost every tape I've encountered with bands that I auditioned for Rat. I still have the tape that they gave me.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
Yeah, I auditioned for the Greg Leon Invasion. And Greg was one of the loudest guitar players in Los Angeles at the time. He was the original guitarist in Dokken before George Lynch. I auditioned for, like that. And so I wish I still had the Steeler tape, which I don't. But I learned the songs. And a few days later, I went back and just Ron and I, just like I'm sitting across from you, Ron sitting on the drum riser, I sit on a chair, and I played bass to the songs and like that. And Ron and I just played one-on-one with each other like that. And it started to feel good.
It clicked.
Like that, at least enough where he wanted to take it to the next level.
Okay.
And he said, Mark Edwards is coming back from his folks in Texas. And I went to pick up Mark from the airport. And he went to the storage place. He got his drums. He set up his drums. So now I'm rehearsing with Ron, 3-piece. Just like Kiss, 3-piece.
Right.
Just like Wasp, 3-piece. Like that. So, and here's me, number 3, I'm replacing somebody else's bass player like that. So this has been, looking back, it's a series of replacing each bass player.
Yeah.
Because I bring something else to the band besides what I play. You have this look.
Yeah.
There's something about you.
They go after
look.
you. Yeah.
That's what we need in this band, is that look.
Right.
It's like they don't care about how I play. Well, they did care, but it's like we need the look. So so now I'm rehearsing with Ron and Mark. Rehearsing. And Mark was the first drummer to actually take me aside in a technical aspect, because Mark was a student of Tommy Aldridge. He looked like Tommy Aldridge, curly hair. He played like Tommy, twirled sticks like Tommy, like that. It was like Tommy Aldridge Jr. I said, Rick, here's the relationship in a bass player in a rhythm section with a drummer. You got to be like gear wheels. You got to fit in like this. Here's the beat. Here's the front of the beat. Here's the back of the beat. Here's this. Here's that. Mark taught me to really listen to what a drummer is saying as he's playing.
Okay.
You start to learn to anticipate where he's going to
What he's going to do. Yeah.
He's going to put a change in here. We're coming to the chorus. He's going to put a change in there. And you're meeting him at that point, and you're accenting together. So we started to write accents into the Steeler songs that were not there before. And instead of, we were so tight, you couldn't get a piece of paper in between us.
Wow.
Like that. I like to say that I've said this in interviews. We were so in the pocket, you wouldn't know your change was gone.
I love
Took the money right out of your pocket.
I love it.
That's how in the pocket we were. And at this point, Ron's like, okay, it's time to call Mike Varney.
Oh,
and Mike had already been showcasing up and coming guitar players in his guitar column in the magazines, and he already had a tape of Malmsteen like that. And Ron had already been talking to Mike Varney about this, and so we got a copy of Yngwie's demo, and the only thing we could compare it to was Eddie Van Halen, because there wasn't that many guys that were doing hammers and tapping and sweeping arpeggios. George Lynch did, but I didn't know George Lynch yet. I wasn't familiar with his playing. I'd seen Warren DeMartini with Rat, but I really didn't have anything else to compare it to. We just sat there with our jaw and went, wow, that's a guitar player?
Mm-hmm.
So we got on a 3-way phone conference with Yngwie in Sweden and us in Los Angeles and Mike Varney up in Northern California. And Yngwie's like, yeah, man, I want to come to LA. I want to play in your band. He was like all excited. I want to play with you guys. Yeah. So it sounded good. And so we made an arrangement to have him flown out from Sweden, just like me flying out from New York. Here's another interesting data point. We picked him up from the airport, I think, on the same day or the day after I arrived in LA a year before.
Really? Wow.
That year, yeah.
Wow.
So it was now, it was February of 1983. By December 28th of my birthday, we were at the Rainbow, and when Ron officially said, you're in the band, you're in Steeler.
Okay.
like that. So
Okay.
like that, and so by February we were rehearsing. By February, we flew Ingve out from Sweden, and it seemed like this was not the same guy that got off the plane that we talked to on the phone.
Uh-huh.
He seemed like, you know, this 19-year-old punk, arrogant, kind of cocky, you know, into like, you know, black magic and pentagrams and all this. I went through that phase in high school, man. You know, I guess he was just trying to be what he thought was cool, his interpretation of cool, and he was into like witchcraft and flying saucers, UFO, paranormal, all this other ghost stories and stuff. It made for other conversations where we weren't playing. And I'll tell you, when he didn't have the guitar on, when we weren't in a musical frame of mind, he was the coolest guy to hang out and talk to. We had some things in common that we would converse about like that. But as soon as that guitar went on, he was like a different person.
Okay.
And he had that guitar on his neck almost 24 hours a day. Except when he wasn't sleeping. Yeah.
Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So he got in. We started to rehearse the songs. And at one point, you know, we stopped one of the songs, and he says to Ron, "Hey, man, can you do something about these songs, make them a little bit more interesting, because they're really quite fucking boring."
Ooh.
And I looked at Mark on the drum riser, and Mark looked down at me. Mark looked up, rolled his eyes like this.
We have a problem here.
Wait a minute. Did new guy just insult the boss's songs? You know, and Ron, I looked at Ron. Ron's a pretty tall guy. And he did what we call a slow burn, which is when somebody gets mad and they get red in the face.
Yeah, yeah.
And they don't say anything. You can see that they're about to explode.
It's gonna explode.
Yeah. And Ron's like, "Okay,
all right, you're gone."
All right. The next day, and the day after, and the day after, we were auditioning other guitar players. Ingve was staying with us. You know, when he first walked into Steeler Mansion, he thought, when he heard the word mansion, he was thinking like a real mansion, like a rich person. And he saw what the conditions we were living in. He's like, "Man, nobody in Sweden lives like this. You know, we get government assistance. Nobody lives this poor." And so he had to sleep in the kitchen area that had the waterbed where the roaches were. It was the only other room available. So he was not a happy camper. And so he was, you know, he just had to listen to us auditioning other guitar players. And of course, nobody was in his ballpark, you know. And finally, you know, after a few days of this, he goes, all right, I get it. Let's play the game. I'll do this. So we stopped auditioning guitar players. He came on board.
He came back
and knuckled down, and we hit it. We were tighter than the piece of paper you couldn't get in between, you know. And now, you know, because Ron knew of my affiliation with Kiss, and I told him, you know, I knew the guy that taught Kiss all of their choreography, all their moves, was Sean Delaney.
Yeah.
You know, and like that. It taught Gene with the blood and the fire and all this. Sean was like the fifth member of Kiss. So I told Ron this in our conversations, and, you know, Ron being a big Kiss fan, and of course, years later being produced by Gene Simmons himself. So I brought that aspect of the stage camaraderie, theatrics, you know, the movements on stage together. Ron dug that. Yeah, Ron, because during some of the solos, Ingve and I would run up to the front of the stage together, and we'd be playing like this, you know, and then Ron would come up in between us like this, and he'd put his arms around both of us. So he's like in the middle, like, and then when it was our time for the solo to stop, Ingve and I would part, and Ron would come down through the middle, and we'd peel away backwards like that.
Kissing, right?
Like that. And so, yeah, so the first show was booked on March 11th, and we were called to open up for the Hughes Thrall band, which is Glenn Hughes and Pat Thrall.
Okay.
And that marked both Ingve and myself our Los Angeles debut in front of a full house at a place called the Country Club, which was a very big venue. It was a very big venue, and everybody was there. And
of course,
the curtain went up, and we hit the lights, and we launched into the first, and everybody was like,
"Yeah, wow,
who's that guitar player? Oh my, who's this guy with the black leather? Looks like the Angel." wait, what? Wow, this is not the Steeler we saw a few months ago.
Right.
Nice.
Completely different band.
We
Right.
put this together in secret,
Yeah.
like that. And so everybody was like, wow,
You hit it up. Okay.
this was the new Steeler.
Broke the
Nice.
glass
So-
ceiling.
What glass ceiling?
Right.
We were now able to compete with Black and Blue and Rat and Motley Crue was now, they had already gotten to the point of past Shout Out the Devil,
Okay.
like that, and when they got the budget for Shout Out the Devil, Nicky called me up. He says, "Listen, I got new amps, I got new everything." He goes, "If you want, I'll give you some of my old costumes. You can have some of my amps." And he called the rehearsal studio where their amps were stored. And sure enough, I went down there and he's Rik Fox says, "Yeah." He goes, "Here," and he gave me some of Nicky's amps.
Oh, look at that. Nice.
I had some, Nicky's original amps that he had when Motley Crue first started.
Wow.
And he offered to sell me his Thunderbird bass, but I didn't have $600 for it at the time. But he gave me his red thigh-high stiletto boots, which I still have. They're black now. But I have his boots. He'd give me some belts and some hand-me-down stage gear. It was like that. So he was a very generous, sweet guy. And he dug me because I was from New York, and we hit it off really well. So
Right.
and a few times we would just hang out like two guys, just having a conversation, about the business and things like that. So
Of course.
so yeah, and Nicky came with Blackie when we played the Roxy. The next time we played the Roxy, we were supporting Vandenberg, Adrian Vandenberg's band, Vandenberg, and they had a hit on the radio with his Broken Heart song. And we did 2 shows, and then they did 2 shows. So it was like we did 2 sets, they did 2 sets. And in between the sets, Nicky came backstage with Blackie. And he said, I'm here to, I want to congratulate you, man. I remember I'm meeting you when you first got here and from New York, and we hung out. And he goes, "Look at you. You're in like one of the top bands in LA, man." He goes, You're in it. You're in the upper circle with us, man. Like that, and Blackie goes, "Hey, if there's anything I can ever do to help you, let me." I said, wait a minute. Now you're offering to help me? I said, "First you kicked me out of the band and take away proof
And now
I
you're
was in the
telling me
band.
this. Right.
Now you want to help me?" He's hedging his bets because now I'm in an up and coming band. Hey, this band could get signed.
That's
Maybe I'm
right.
going to be nice to this guy,
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right.
And I said, "Why don't you tell the truth? Why don't you tell people I was in the band?" And he goes, "No, the game is not played that way. It doesn't work that way." I said, "What do you mean? What game?" He says, "No, it just doesn't work that way." And that was the last time we'd ever talked.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
And-
Okay. After that, never again. Okay.
And after that, he's always denied that I was in the band.
Okay.
So that's Steeler.
That's Steeler, and that's one heck of a story. And I think we should end our musical journey here because we could go on for hours here. It's really clear, Rik, that there's so many facets to both your life and your musical career.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
It's hard to encapsulate this down.
It
yeah,
really is.
big
There's so
time.
much going on.
It's to a small Reader's Digest version because there's all of these little interesting sidebar data points
Oh yeah.
that tie in. And one story leads to this, but that story leads to these, and this story leads to that. So
And
But
your
it-
memory, your memory, it's incredible, man. So you even remember the dates, with so much precision. It's
Well,
unbelievable.
and by that though, there's some things the stuff I wish I could remember. There's more details, and I just
I'm sure.
it's been so many years. You lose track of what
Yeah,
we did this day, what we did that day, and oh yeah, that I forgot about that.
of course.
Before we close the show, can you tell our listeners where they can learn more about you and find out more about your upcoming projects?
Okay. Well, I'm on Facebook, like that. I'm not on Instagram or Twitter yet. I hope at some point maybe I'll get an Instagram account and do that as well. I'm going to be plans to record a song for an artist in Norway called, I think I pronounced it correctly, Stian Pian Thorensen, and he's got an all-star project with all these different rock stars, big high-level rock stars playing on it, like that. And he wrote a song that's going to have Vinny Appice playing on drums, and I have that. I'm working with that, but right now my priority has been on working with Ron Keel, and we just recorded a song for the Ron Keel All Stars called American Thunder, which is a tribute to all music styles. That's just been released. It's got the drummer from Y&T on it, and Stacy Blades from LA Guns is on it. He's with Crashing Wayward. I can remember all of the names of all the guys. Ron Cathy's singing a duet with Ron on that from Crushing Wayward. So after that, I'm going to get back to working with the song with Christian like that. And we'll mark a second time that I'm going to be recording with Vinny Appice. A few years ago, I recorded 2 songs on an album called The London Fog with the Jim Crean Project. And we did 2 songs that had Vinny Appice on drums. And one of them had we did an Angel song with Frank Domino singing like that. On one of the, so we did Don't Take Your Love, and Vinny's playing drums on that. And we did just the title song for the album. Song was called Broken. And that had Vinny Appice also on it. Robbie Lochner from Jack Russell's Great White is on it. Steph Hond, guitar player, keyboard player, Steph Hond in France. He's on it on those songs as well. A great player, great artist. And so, that's kind of what I've been doing. Projects have become, hit and miss, like here, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. I'm waiting for something more consistent because here in Missouri, there's no rock scene. There's nothing like that
exactly.
here.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to be happening. Who knows if the world's going to last, into the next year with the crazy people with their fingers on the buttons,
Exactly.
So we can only hope that it doesn't go to that, and we can continue doing our music. So
of course.
But that's you can find me on Facebook right now. It's
super.
Spot.
Rik, we always like to end our interviews with a tribute to the Kiss Army, and who better than you, who's part of the family? You've been in the inner circle, and you still are with Kiss, with the band. So, and you came across so many different musical projects, and you have met so many fans. How would you rate Kiss fans compared to the fans of other musical projects that you were part of? So if you have a last word to the Kiss Army, what would you say?
I mean, Kiss is probably one of the most dedicatedly loyal fan followings I've ever seen. Having seen Kiss now when they went to bigger arenas like Madison Square Garden, I've seen Kiss play in little clubs. Now I see them on the big stages. You kind of feel like a proud parent. When I heard their first album debut on the radio in New York, you kind of feel like, wow, I was part of that. I was there watching that grow. They weren't even called Kiss yet. And now I'm in the front row at Madison Square Garden looking up at them. And here's Peter Criss waving at me, and Paul's throwing guitar picks and like that. And, Kiss, and you turn around, you look at the audience, I'm going, look at all these crazy Kiss fans. I mean, the loyalty factor, the dedication that I've seen Kiss fans have. And it's sad to see that there's some division sometimes, the people arguing with each other over which member they like, or they don't like Tommy Thayer in the band, or they don't like Eric Singer in the band. They want the originals. They want Ace. They want Peter. Sometimes, families have a family will have issues, and a family might not get along, and they might break up. So you still have your loyalties to these people who were in the band, but sometimes it doesn't work out getting back together. So you kind of, you kind of still got to, remember why you liked Kiss in the first place, and they're still playing the songs that you loved, and they put on, probably one of the best shows in the world. They went from throwing buckets of confetti in a club at people in the front row to having the biggest light show and the biggest effects. And it was like, on the Kiss Alive album, when they would do that part in 100,000 Years, when Peter would be playing the drums and Paul would go, "Do you feel all right?" And all the sparklers and the pyrotechnics would go off, and he'd do that, 3 or 4 times. That all came from the Wizard of Oz. When the guy in the curtain goes, "I am Oz," and all the explosions would go off. That's exactly where Gene got that from, and Paul. So you're essentially watching Wizard of Oz on stage. They just learned how to use those effects and that's what makes Kiss fans. I mean, people want to go to a show. They want to go, wow. They want to remember that forever.
Yeah.
That's their memories. I mean, look at, I remember, you guys are Kiss fans. You remember whatever you've seen of Kiss, and, to see them for the first time on TV, on the Mike Douglas show, and on when they play the in concert
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that. And it's
XR,
like every step, and you're going, wow. And I'm one of those fans. I was there, when it was born. So, Kiss fans are some of the most loyal, dedicated fans I've ever seen. And God bless them for it. Kiss are lucky. They are lucky to have and fortunate to have fans like that dedicated. And you guys yourself, of course, included. It's just amazing, and I'm blessed with the ability to be able to share these stories with the Kiss fans everywhere. My pictures from the Fillmore East, from the press show that I took, those pictures, I originally sold a few of those to who was a friend. He made illegal copies of all of my Kiss pictures and was selling them to fans around the world.
Oh, really?
Without my photo credit, not knowing that those pictures were mine.
Coming from you.
And I started to see them show up in Kiss magazines with other people's watermarks on them. And if you go to, you type in Google Kiss 1972 or 73, and all of these bootleg Kiss CDs come up, and they have my pictures on them. And I'm like, I don't have Gene's ability financially to track down all of these people and get my money. These people are using all my pictures illegally over the years. Maybe some of them don't know that they're my pictures.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, somebody will come along like you guys, or like I did a story for the Swedish Kiss magazine. And I said, they asked me, you can use my pictures, but you have to put in there that not you guys, but other people have stolen these pictures. So if you see them on the internet and my name is not on them, you have to let us know, because let the Kiss Army know, all the fans. Those pictures were taken by Rik Fox.
Right.
And so like my Coventry pictures, I started putting my name on them.
Yeah.
So people couldn't steal them. And of course, last year, I think it was, I got contacted by Kurt Gooch.
Yeah.
Who's a Kiss author. And he arranged, they did an A&E special on Kiss. And he arranged to license some of my Coventry pictures, which were on that program. And Ken Sharp reached out to me when he wrote the book, Nothing to Lose, The Making of Kiss. He said, I noticed that you've been ignored pretty much by a lot of the Kiss universe. So I'd like to help do something to change that. And I'd like to interview you for my book. And can I use some of your pictures? Which he did. And so he was the person that really broke the ice with that for me and got me more attention to the Kiss fans by having my interviews, my anecdotes, my memories like that. And then some of my pictures from the Fillmore East show are in there. And it's just photos by Rik Fox. So people are going to think, oh, I remember that photo, pictures from that session.
That's Rik. That's right.
It's got to be Rick's the guy who took those pictures.
That's right. Exactly.
This is like one of the messages I'm trying to get out to the Kiss fans. When you see those old Fillmore East pictures, 99% of them are mine. There was no other photographers really that we knew of that knew how to take the pictures of them because they were so new.
Yeah.
They didn't know when Gene was going to blow the fire.
Exactly.
I did.
You
I
knew
was
the
watching,
whole routine.
I would watch Gene's lips through the lens of my camera. I can tell where he's looking for the breeze, and he would go and tighten his lips. I knew when he was going to spit the fuel.
Right.
And I clicked it. I got the ball of flame coming right out of his mouth like that. So I like I said, the Kiss fans are some of the most loyal, dedicated fans in the world. I to some extent, I'm still a Kiss fan, not as much as I was, but for what they gave me and what I was able to take from them and give to the world in music, if you can do like with Kiss, make a positive difference in somebody's life, that's what it's all about.
Exactly.
Well, Rik, I want to say that you cannot and will not and should not be ignored. And I really hope our listeners enjoy this particular episode and share this episode, because your story deserves to be heard. And I really hope that people, our listeners, enjoy this as much as we've enjoyed this tonight. So thank you once again for being on the Kiss Army Nation podcast. It's
my honor and privilege and a pleasure to thank you guys for having me on. I salute you guys for what you do and interviewing various rock stars, rock musicians, and keeping our name alive out there.
Absolutely.
And relevant to the fans, and especially to the Kiss fans, of course. And I thank you back, mille grazie, and thank you very much. Thank you very much. One of my favorite spaghetti sauces. Very good.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know what? I feel like I have to echo what Paz was saying. Rick, thank you so much, man. It's been an awesome pleasure to have you in. Listening to your stories. We could be here in Ugly for hours because you've been there. You're still there, man, and fantastic. As a Kiss fan, and what the kind of message that you're sent to everybody. We hope it goes through. And thank you so much again. For being with us. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, guys. I think the spirit of my late wife is involved in this somehow, helping me to go further in the music, and get the recognition that she felt I deserved. So thank you.
Of course.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Of course you do. Thank you so much.
To the Kiss Army, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and please share this incredible story. It deserves to be heard. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please send them to talktomie@kissarmynationpodcast.com. Until the next time, remember, never stop rocking. Take care, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe on YouTube, or follow us on Spotify, Automatic, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to make yourself heard. Leave us a comment on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. See you all soon, Kiss Army.